Hi, this is Jose Palomino with another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. And our guest today is Jacqui Genow of jgenowmarketing.com. And Jacqui is a real specialist in understanding the connection between brand strategy and your actual business strategy and how you have to look at those things together. So we're going to go deep into this topic in this episode. So let's welcome Jacqui to the show right now. Well, welcome, Jacqui, to the Revenue Throughput Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jose. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so Jacqui, I was particularly interested in having this conversation with you because of your focus area in branding, messaging. I know you do a lot more than that, but that really being an anchor to it. So maybe just as context for our listeners, who do you typically work with? And what are some of the things you kind of do for them? And then we'll take the conversation from there.
Sure. So I typically work with businesses that have between 1 and 100 employees. So those businesses that, they've been around for a while, they're established, but they've really taken their business as far as they can go with the resources that they have, and they're ready to break through to that next level. That's usually when they reach out, I get introduced to them. And I have three main areas of focus. The brand strategy, which I think we'll get into a little bit more. I also work with clients in doing marketing action plans. So one of the things that I've noticed is nobody wants to sit around and have a 30-page strategic marketing plan presented to them. So I've really condensed it to focus on a 3 to 6 month time frame of what businesses need to do immediately before they can move on to all of the great ideas that they have. And the third is I work on an ongoing basis with clients as a marketing coach, a fractional CMO, just really depending on the level of engagement that they need.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. And there's probably 3 podcast episodes in here, but we have one right now, so we're going to try to make do with it because I love the idea of branding, especially. I work almost exclusively in B2B, right? I think a large part of your practice would probably fall into that category as well. And I find, especially those older companies, the last time real branding thought was given was like when the father owned the business or something like that. So
Right.
how do you find it? How do you find that engagement? Do they come to you saying we need rebranding, or do you maybe you got brought in for other reasons and you say, boy, this brand really needs a refresh? How do you engage that conversation with an owner? What are some things that an owner listening to this podcast should be paying attention
Yeah.
to? Say, boy, those are real. That's us.
Yeah. It's interesting. I always say my best prospects are the ones who come to me and say, we need help and I don't know what that is.
Okay.
A lot of businesses, like you said, their father owned it. They started a business 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And inevitably what happens is things shift. Their focus shifts a little bit. Their client, their target base shifts a little bit. They've brought in new products, new services. The culture has shifted a little bit. And they're still speaking the same language that they did when they first opened their doors and wondering why nothing's connecting. They're not being able to connect with the audience. It's not resonating. There's something just feels off kilter and you can't really figure out why. Another way that clients come to me actually is through third-party providers. So I work a lot with web developers. When a business comes to them and says, we need a new website or it's outdated, we've changed things. And really where they need to start though is with a brand strategy, because it becomes clear in looking at their website, they don't have a clear message. They no longer know who their target audience is. And that's the work that needs to happen before redesigning a website. Otherwise, you're just putting the same content out there and it's not going to be as effective. Your website should be an effective marketing tool, but unless the brand strategy your identity, your messaging is really clear and focused, it's not going to be the tool that you need it to be.
So that what's interesting about that, because if we took one word out of what you just described,
Right.
it'd still be exactly true. If you took brand out of it and you say your strategy has to be clear,
Mm-hmm.
right? It'd still be the same
Mm-hmm.
truth. So essentially, and I make that distinction for this reason, because I've run into folks who think they need new branding, but aren't
Mm-hmm.
willing to take it down to studs to really look at
Yeah.
the deep questions you're
Mm-hmm.
saying. They'd say, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I like that blue. I saw that blue on my competitors, so can you do something? And
Mm-hmm.
I need a more modern logo or something like that. So how do you help an owner see that? Look, the question's a lot deeper than the
Yeah.
color or the shape or how modern the logo is or isn't.
It's interesting because this is one of my biggest frustrations when it comes to the conversation around branding. And it's probably, as marketing people, it's probably our fault for not really making this clear. So logos, colors, your website, all of that are the visual manifestations of your brand strategy. So in order to get to the right color, the right look and feel, is it whimsical? Is it serious? Is it avant-garde? Is it retro? Before you can get to any of that, you need to know who you are as a business. And I want to emphasize it's who you are as a business, not what your business is.
Mm.
Because who you are as a business really gets to the core of not just who's your target, what do you provide, what's different. It really gets to the essence of why are you here? Why does this matter to you? Why are you doing this work? Because that's what people are going to connect with.
Wow. So that connection point, to your point is, and I've actually run into this with owners who think I need a tagline like, like Nike, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said,
Yeah.
well, especially in small B2B, that doesn't mean anything. It only means
Mm-hmm.
something because Nike pounded with billions of dollars that
Right.
into our consciousness, so we know what it is, or that Coke is the
Mm-hmm.
real thing, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, so in reality, a lot of these smaller companies, right, and the companies you
Mm-hmm.
described from 1 to 100 employees would still be a small
Mm-hmm.
company. They're not
Yeah.
GE, Google, or something like that.
Right.
What are some things that they should be wary of when they look at big company? They read in Forbes or in Fortune. They say, "Well, they did a
Mm-hmm.
rebranding. We need to do exactly that." What are some things
Mm-hmm.
that are unique to being small that are different in how you might approach branding and these kind of strategic things you're talking about than if you're a big company?
Right. Right. Well, one, it's a lot less expensive. You
True.
know, the thing that most small businesses don't realize is that those big guys spend millions of dollars in branding. They invest in it over decades. It's not, they don't sit down in a room and come up with a tagline. They they've done all the homework. They've done all that strategic work. They've done focus groups. They test out. They research and study. They analyze all of their data, and because of the scale that they are, it just costs a lot of money. So the benefit of being a small business is you can move more quickly, right? There's fewer people that need to be involved in the process. So when I take on a brand strategy and messaging project, the first thing that I do is analyze the client's data. I want to see what's working and what's not in their business. I want to look at all of their marketing efforts. I want to see how things are working, what they've been doing in the past. But then I speak directly with their clients. I go through a series of interviews with them. And I mean, we're talking 15, 20-minute interviews. These
Mm-hmm.
aren't, lengthy
Right.
things, but I speak directly with them. It's not through a survey. I like to have one-on-one conversations to really capture who the business is in the eyes of their best customers. I want to find out the language that they're using. I want to find out the, what are those roadblocks? What are the pain points that the company can be doing better? And because they're a small business, it's much easier to have those direct conversations with their clients than it is when you're a big company. When you're a big company, again, it takes a lot of money and a lot of focus groups in order to be able to have that direct contact, or you just resort to surveys, which can still get the job done, but are never going to provide the wealth of information and sort of aha moments that you can get when you're speaking with somebody. I once had a client. I was going through this process, and he designs traffic signal intersections, and one of the clients that I spoke with about him was like, he's the expert's expert. He's the one that all of the experts go to when we can't figure it out. It was right. You cannot make that up. You can get there. Right. It just brought everything into focus. That's what he is. That's who he is. He's the guy that all of the experts, the ones that you think know everyone or everything, he's the guy that they go to. It's amazing.
Well, that's a leadership position, and it's actually it's one of deep respect. That means the market respects them. And what's interesting about it too is you might have talked to your client extensively, and that may never have come up because some people just don't know how other people perceive them.
Exactly.
They may say, "Well, I hope they think we're experts," but it turns out, no, you're the expert's expert. You're the top.
You're the guy.
Wow. You certainly build a campaign and a whole strategy around that expertise.
Exactly.
And one thing that's interesting in how how you described your process, Jacqui, and I really appreciate you analyze the data, right? You look at the information. So sometimes an owner who has not done this process right may think, well, I'm bringing in a branding or messaging strategist. Why do you need all those numbers? Because what they think, it's all art. It's crafty copywriting. It's we need, or they say, I have somebody who came up with some really great looking designs. So how do you explain to an owner that the connection between the aesthetic and the analytic, and why those two things have to live? You need both.
Because we need something in order to base our recommendations on. Otherwise, I will say one of the mistakes many business owners make, especially small business owners, is relying on anecdotal evidence. They hear things from customers, they see things, they get a gut reaction, and they feel like they know. And the truth is, until you are able to put that information in a non-emotional capacity and to look at it as just data points, you're always bringing emotion into it. You're always bringing your wants, your beliefs, and it's tainting the evidence. Or tainting the data. So when you're able to look at that and say, look, I know that you're saying that, X is your strongest service, and that's the one that you really want to push. But when we're looking at the data, it's actually Y. You may have more X customers, but Y has a shorter sales funnel and actually is bringing in more revenue. So we're able to look at that and then craft messaging around that.
Wow. Well, that's interesting because I've been in that meeting where delivering, because what you do the analysis, and all of a sudden you realize, I usually stipulate to an owner, know your business. And that's true. They know their business. No one knows as well as somebody who's living it 24/7, and they really are passionate about what they're doing. But what happens, it's the same issue though, which is you're too close to the picture. You're,
Yes.
what
Yeah.
is,
You're,
you just can't see,
exactly.
you have no perspective. Um,
Right. I had an owner that I was working with that who's a fractional CFO, and I was about to start this process of speaking with his clients. And, in the course of my conversations, every single person that I spoke with mentioned this one thing that he was trying to get them to do. And the pressure that they felt in him constantly bringing up, and they didn't have time. It was just, it was just a weight for them, and a source of a stress point for his clients. And when I brought it up with him, he said, you a weight has been lifted off of me. I've been feeling like for so long that that again, he was feeling that stress from his clients about this one part of the process. And it was an add-on part that he was supposed to be a revenue generator. And we had the conversation. He was like, but it's critical. It is essential to what I do. I have to have it done. But that opened up the conversation to, if it's essential to what you do, then make it part of what you do, not an add-on service, and figure out a way for you yourself to carry the burden, not your clients. And it just completely shifted the process of how he got the information that he needed in order to perform the work he needed to do.
well, you also took it from being something that was potentially for a prospect. It sounds like the kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
that might go, ugh, do we really got to do that? So that could be a
Yeah.
deal killer. Or even
Yeah.
post sale, it becomes like it just reduces satisfaction because like that's not really what I
Mm-hmm.
want to do. Why didn't you tell me that sooner? And so on. So,
Right. Exactly.
so it was fascinating is, in your work, you're looking at the business and not just saying, okay, how do I put the wrapper on it? But you're looking at
Mm-hmm.
what's inside the box because it determines what goes on
Exactly.
the wrapper. Like you can't put the ingredients unless you know what's in
Mm-hmm.
the mix.
Right. Well, and I mean, and that's it. It's, and that's why, I say I'm a brand and business strategist, because I really look at that intersection of business and marketing. I'm not just focusing on how do we make it sound pretty? How do we make it look pretty to be enticing to people? I want it to be true. If what you are selling and the image that you are putting out cannot be upheld in the actual experience of your customers, you're not going to be in business for long, because those people are then going to go out and they're going to define your brand based on the experience that they had, right? Businesses do not own their brand. Customers own the brand. It lives in the hearts and minds of your customers.
Mm-hmm.
You can be part of the process and actively engage in trying to ensure that what you want your customers to think and feel about your business aligns with what they think and feel about your business. And if you don't do that necessary work, then they're going to go out and, based on the experience they have, through word of mouth, they're going to define it for you.
It was fascinating about that. It's just thinking about all the brands that I love, right? As you're talking there, and I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
the brand, my association to that brand is not what they told me it should be. Now, maybe
Right.
the master marketers said, yes, it is. We got in your head a lot earlier. You just didn't
Right.
notice it. But I think for the most part, it's things that you just associate with that overall experience, right? Especially in consumer
Mm-hmm.
products, there's things you grow to love or hate. But in
Uh-huh.
B2B, it really is. It's a big ticket item usually, right? You're selling a machine,
Mm-hmm.
selling some expensive services. People get pretty impassioned about what they think the endpoint result was, and if they don't feel they got
Mm-hmm.
what they were looking
Mm-hmm.
for, they're not thinking so highly of you. So it doesn't matter what your
Right.
website said or your brochure or your email
Exactly.
tagline. So,
Yeah.
wow. Well, Jacqui, is there any question that you think I could have asked you that would be helpful here?
So, One of the things that I found early in my career, again, well, I'd say it's especially with small business, but the truth is it's even with marketers, right? Is really understanding the difference between marketing, advertising, and branding.
Mm.
Too often the terms are used interchangeably, but they really mean different things. And I think it can be such a benefit for business owners to get really clear on what each of those buckets entail, so that when they do go out and want to bring in, a website developer, a marketing consultant, somebody, who does branding, they have the correct vernacular in order to ensure, or at least better ensure, that they're bringing in the right person to help them solve the problem that they have.
Right. And if the branding person they bring in starts off with, "What are your favorite colors?" they're probably not going to somebody who's going deep enough.
They're right. They're not going to a strategist. They're going to a graphic designer.
A graphic designer. There you go. Which is perfectly fine living to make, but
Which is perfectly fine, but just know that that is what you're hiring. You are doing graphic design. You're not doing brand strategy. You are doing a brand identity package.
great. No, that's a really good clarification. Well, Jacqui, thank you so much for, I think, some great insights for our listeners here on just how to think about the connection
Mm-hmm.
here between who you are, how you want to be seen, and
Mm-hmm.
actually undergoing the hard work of developing a brand strategy. If somebody listening wanted to know more about you, Jacqui, or how to contact you, what would be the best way to get a hold of you?
Going to my website, which is jgenowmarketing.com, and that is JGENOW marketing.com.
Perfect. And we'll have that in our show notes as well. But in case somebody's listening, jgenowmarketing.com. We've had as our guest here Jacqui Genow. And thank you so much, Jacqui, for your insights. It's deeply appreciated. And I'm sure very useful to our listeners.
Thanks so much, Jose. This was great.